Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Q&A for the Warrior Heart Practice, Toltec practices to release old stories and realign with your truth. I am Nadira Ade with the Shift Network, and it is my pleasure to be your host as we explore the teachings of HeatherAsh Amara and address questions about her upcoming course, which begins on Tuesday, February 11th at 12 noon Pacific. If you are unable to join us live, you can still participate in this course. I'll explain more about that later, but first I want to take a moment to introduce our special guest. HeatherAsh Amara is the author of the best-selling book, Warrior Goddess Training, Become the Woman You Are Meant to Be, The 7 Secrets to Happy and Healthy Relationships with Don Miguel Ruiz, and the newly released The Warrior Heart Practice, a simple process to transform confusion into clarity and pain into peace. In 2001, after an apprenticeship and teaching partnership with Don Miguel Ruiz, Amara founded TOSI, the Toltec Center of Creative Intent, a non-denominational religious organization based in the wisdom of the Toltec and the Four Agreements. Over the past 30 years, she's taught workshops and apprenticeships and trained teachers. She now travels the world working with people to integrate the wisdom of the ancients into their modern lives. Please join me in welcoming HeatherAsh, who's going to lead us in an opening practice. HeatherAsh, it is great to have you with us.
Thanks so much, Nadira. It's so great to be back with the Shift Network. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Facebook Live. And I'm so excited to hear what your questions are. And I wanted to start first with a little grounding and getting here. So if you'll take a moment and put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly and close your eyes. And take a breath first into your heart. So really mindfully breathing into your heart so you can feel your hand moving. As you bring all this air and presence into your heart, take another breath. And then with your next breath, take a breath into your belly, bringing your awareness to your belly. And as you exhale, letting go of the rest of your day, taking another breath, big inhalation into the belly. Good. And taking a moment to honor whatever you're feeling right now. So what are you feeling in your body? What sensations? You might feel a sensation of openness or relaxation or tension or frustration, whatever's present. Just notice. And by coming into relationship with your body right now, with your emotions right now, just say hello. Good. And putting both hands on your heart. So bringing your other hand up to your heart. Take another breath. And making that commitment as we step into exploring more about the Warrior Heart practice to hold with your love, with your compassion, your emotional body, your stories, your thoughts, your mental experiences, to also hold your truth and to hold your intent. And ask yourself right now, where do you want to put your intent? So just pick one word before we start. That's your intent for today. And that word might be presence, it might be compassion, it might be play, it can be any word. What's your word for yourself for right now? And breathing that quality in, whatever word you chose, bring it from a mental concept into your body so that you're feeling that word, that quality of your intent. Beautiful. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and be present here. Okay, Nadira, I'm ready.
Thank you. That was delicious. We are going to spend the rest of our time together exploring questions for HeatherAsh as we prepare for her video course, The Warrior Heart Practice, which begins Tuesday, February 11th at noon Pacific. Please visit our website, warriorheartcourse.com, to learn more about this 8-module course and to find a link to register. And now we're going to get started with the questions. Thank you to everyone who sent your questions in ahead of time through our webcast. For those of you joining us live, please type your questions into the chat and I will offer them. And we're going to start with this question from our webcast, where Logan says, how do I know if I have a warrior heart?
How you know you have a warrior heart is that it's a process, that it's not something that you just arrive to one day, that you're dedicated to learning how to bring more love, more compassion, more presence into your life. And so if you're willing, you have a warrior heart because you're on the path of transformation. This isn't about arriving. There is arriving, but what we're really interested in as being a warrior of the heart is the journey that we're on and learning how to open our heart and bring our heart's wisdom through to the challenges and the creativity of our life.
Thank you very much. Jackie says, when we're doing the practices, do we concentrate on the center of the chest or on the heart itself?
Really, what you're focusing on is your whole body. So we're learning how to center ourselves in our heart, and how we do that is by opening our awareness to include every part of ourself. So especially when you're working in the feeling chamber. So when we start the practice, the first question is, what am I feeling? And that's about your entire body. What's happening in your entire body? What's happening in your feet, in your shoulders, in your belly? And so you're scanning the body to check in with your feelings. And then when you move to the second chamber, to the story chamber, what you want to do is really ask yourself, what am I telling myself? And that is often, right, it's your mind, what your mind is saying. And so you may notice where that is impacting your body, but what you're going to be doing is looking at what's the story. That's the main focus. And it's when you get to your truth and your intent, when you're working in the third chamber of truth and the fourth chamber of intent, that you can then start to really bring your awareness into your heart. And because we're talking about both the physical and the energetic heart, because they work together, whether you focus on your physical heart or you focus on the center of your chest, both work. What I would invite you to do, which is a really great exercise for all of us, is to start asking yourself the question while you're moving in the world, how does my heart feel now? Does my heart feel open or does my heart feel closed? And just get curious about that question. What does my heart feel like when it's open? What does my heart feel like when it's closed? No judgment, but just start to witness that. And that will help you to start to center in your heart and make it easier as you go through, especially the truth and the intent chamber, to open to more information, more guidance from yourself. And then when you circle back, to also bring that open heart back into the story chamber.
Thank you very much. And what happens if you try to skip the feeling and story chambers and go right to the truth? Can you do that?
You can. And there's one instance we can say where I actually recommend that you go to the truth chamber first. And there's also a reason not to do that. So let me share both experiences. So truth chamber. If you are in trauma, so if you're triggered and you're having a physical big reaction, a trauma reaction, the best thing to do is actually go to the truth chamber first. So go to the third chamber. You don't necessarily, when you're in trauma, want to go to the feeling or the story because you're already traumatized. And you don't want to traumatize yourself more or re-traumatize yourself. And so what we found to be incredibly helpful for people that have trauma, PTSD, difficult childhood experiences, disassociation, is start by asking yourself, what's true here? And get yourself into the present moment so that you can show up here rather than in the past. And then you can get clear about what your intent is, and then go back to look at what's the story, what's the feeling. Okay, so that's for really important if you have trauma. For people that don't have trauma, where you're trying to unravel a story, but you don't like the story, you're bored of the story, you don't think you should have the story, I would point you towards do the practice, starting with the first chamber, what am I feeling? And then into the second chamber, what am I telling myself? The danger, we can say, of trying to jump to the truth chamber too soon is that you can miss a lot of really valuable information, including old stories like I shouldn't have a story, or I'm bored, I don't want to have this story. You can inadvertently bury your story because you're not attending to it. You're not really looking at what's there. And what I want to support all of us in doing is being willing to be with the mess of our feelings, to see what's there, not forever, but just to check in, what's going on in my body, and also to be with the mess of your mind. What's happening in my mind? And to be able to learn to start witnessing it. So there's so much information when we separate the feeling from the story, and when we really allow ourselves to be honest about what the story is that I'm telling myself. Because so often that story's gotten really tangled together with stuff from your past. And again, if you try and just jump to the truth chamber, you could miss some really important old agreements or beliefs that you have that are what's keeping you back. So turning towards the story can be incredibly valuable, and then getting clear with what the truth is.
Thank you very much. And since you touched on trauma, I want to bring this question forward because there were actually several people who were asking about how this work might help to resolve trauma. So can you say a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So I've worked with a lot of people that have trauma in their backgrounds and that are both, I have people that are consulting with me who are both have had trauma and are also experts in trauma, and therapists and somatic experience practitioners. So we've done a lot of work with how to use the warrior heart practice with trauma. And it is incredibly effective, and you want to change the practice. So you start in the truth if you're feeling traumatized. If you're not feeling traumatized, and so if you're in a situation where you're triggered, but you don't have the trauma response, then you can go through the practice of what am I feeling and start to check in with your feelings and what's the story. But you also know that you have a tool if you do get traumatized, if you do have a trauma response, that you start with the truth, that you jump right to the truth chamber and practice bringing yourself into the present moment. And really, this is just basic support for your body of I'm safe right now. And it's also really helpful to touch yourself, to come into, okay, I'm safe right now. Where am I at? So that you come into the present, you get physically anchored in this place and this time. You breathe so that you start to slow your nervous system down, start to calm the nervous system. And then you ask yourself, what's my intent? And that's really, what's your intent in your healing right now? What do you need? When you ask yourself that question, it gives you your body the opportunity to let you know, this is what I need for healing. I need more of a sense of safety, or I need more boundaries. Sometimes that's the medicine. Or my intent is a sense of freedom. And once you have that, then you can go back to the truth, gather what's true now, and then you can go back and start to explore what I think of as those two lower chambers of the feeling and the story. And you want to be gentle. It's important when you have trauma that you're gentle with going back to the story and saying, what's the story? And learning how to witness the story while you hold what the intent is. Okay, while you hold the truth. That's when you can get in there and start to unravel and to start to heal the nervous system. It takes time, and I really recommend if you have high levels of trauma from your past that you work with somebody who has specialty in trauma and that you bring the book to them. You know, I did a session for somebody who had a really difficult domestic violence situation in her life, and then she had been physically abused. And what she found is that using the warrior heart practice, she was able to untangle some things from her trauma that she wasn't able to do in therapy, because the therapist wanted her to tell the story. And I realized I don't really care about the story. I care about what her response to the story was. And so that's what we worked through the practice. And so at the end, she's like, I am bringing this practice back to my therapist. So that's something that you can also do as well, is say, I have a tool I'd like to use and I want your support. And for people that have trauma, or even people that have like high level of emotions, or you're scared of your emotional body, having somebody with you when you do the practice can be incredibly healing and helpful. It might be a friend that you buddy up with that can allow you to open to your emotional body more than you might if you were by yourself.
Thank you. And can you say a little bit more about how the course relates to the book? Do participants need to have the book? Would they benefit from having the book? Is it they stand alone kind of thing?
It's going to be a standalone because we'll go in depth through the book. And I also recommend people get the book or the audio if that's a way that you learn is more auditory or more visual, because it'll support the work that we'll be doing through the Shift Network. One of the things that we offer is a couple free downloads of the chapters, so you can read it to see like, yes, this is something that I definitely want to get the book. And I'll also be delving into each of the chambers in depth in the course. So I'm really excited about that, because we'll be doing a really deep dive into how do you navigate your feelings? How do you be in good relationship with your feelings? How do you clear out feelings from the past? What do you do if you've repressed your emotional body? So we'll have a lot of time to answer questions and explore that feeling chamber. We'll do the same thing with the story chamber. How do the stories get so tangled up? How do I also heal the ancestral stories that I'm carrying forward? How do I release those and untangle those? We'll go through the truth chamber as well. And this has been a big question that people have been asking me since the book came out. The book only came out 3 weeks ago, but people have been really looking at, oh, wait a minute, something I thought was the truth is actually a story. And I've had a lot of people go, oh my gosh, I've been telling myself that this story was the truth for my whole life. How do I figure out what's actually true? And how do you know the difference? So that's something we'll be exploring as well. And why the truth is so important, why it's important to get to the truth. And then also this idea of intent, which is your focus, your commitment, your 100% willingness to put your energy towards something. And what I love about our work with intent is that it teaches you how to take responsibility for yourself in a really beautiful way. And this is something that I talk about in the book. There's something in the book that we'll talk about in the course, but it's these 7 different qualities of a warrior of the heart. And one of them is self-responsibility. And so something that we'll be exploring as well, because most of us don't have a great relationship with the word responsibility because we equal it with punishment. And for a warrior of the heart, responsibility is our total presence and owning that we have power to make changes for ourself. And it's also learning not to take responsibility for other people's reality or other people's lives. So we'll also untangle that as well. So there'll be a lot of overlap with the book and the course, but there's also things that are in each of them that will be different, depending on the group. This is something that I always love doing with live courses is we'll get to interact with each other. And so depending on what the group need is what we'll also bring through with the teaching.
Thank you. I got excited about that part of not taking responsibility for other people's stories. That's a really big one. It's so big. Um, Jazz would like to know, or Jazz says, having a warrior heart can be daunting when there's so much negativity going on in the world at large. Do you have some self-care tips on how to detach and remain heart-centered and unaffected by world negativity? I'm an empath and I have to learn and practice better detachment.
Such an important question. And yes, being a warrior of the heart is not necessarily easy or makes all your challenges go away or makes the world stop being negative or the world being, your life being challenging or upsetting at times, but how you navigate it will change. And so, as somebody who is learning how to center into their heart, one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself is not trying to change the world indirectly. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of times what happens is we start getting this story of it's too messy, I don't like the world, it's too negative, it shouldn't be negative, people shouldn't be mean to each other. So there's a lot of story that we start developing, or I'm too sensitive, I can't do this. And those storylines might be really innocent in the beginning, but what happens is they start taking on more and more mass. The more and more that you think about how the world should be different without being conscious about that, and I'll talk about that in a second, but of judging other people or the world or judging yourself for not being able to navigate it better, whatever's happening is it gets heavier and heavier and it pulls your energy. It starts taking a lot of energy. And so when we start to really own what our story is and clean it up and get clear about what is your intent in relationship to the world, then when you know what's true and what your intent is, you can start to unravel those old stories. And so you can stay centered regardless of what's happening. And you know where to take action. And this is a really big piece that I want to bring into the course, is that we are faced with so many challenges in the world right now. There's in America, we're in a political, we're about to do an election. So it means it's going to get super messy. It's already messy. It's going to get super messy and polarized over this year. We also have the environment and all the information that's coming in about the environment. We also have, I just did a big read about sex trafficking and just how there's so many issues that we're dealing with right now. And we're also getting information about all those issues. And so how do we learn how to stay centered without detaching? How do we learn to stay open-hearted without feeling like we have to take responsibility for everything? So there's a way, as a warrior of the heart, what you're learning to do is clean out the story so that you can listen really deeply to yourself about what is your action to take. What's your gift to bring into the world? And so you then become incredibly effective because you're not thrown off. It's going to hurt sometimes. Reading this article the other day, I was just like, oh my God, this is so painful. What's happening to people? And then I would get quiet and say, what's my action? What can I do? And there's going to be places where you're going to be really called to take action. That's important. And there's going to be other places you're going to realize this is not my place. There are other people that will take action on this one. And so instead of having this, I have to take action on everything, overwhelm that can happen, or I can't deal with this, I'm just going to completely shut myself off and not take any action. We're in this flow of listening to where's my right action. And we also learn, this is something I'll work with everyone through the course as well, is how to hold yourself so that you're less permeable to other people's thoughts and emotions, so that you're working with your own content rather than trying to process unconsciously other people's content.
That was a lot of really valuable information. And I especially appreciate your emphasis on starting from a place of intent, because one of the questions that I saw coming up was about the fact that releasing a story can be destabilizing. But it sounds like what you're saying is that when you have the intent in place, when you're releasing the story, you aren't releasing into nothingness, you're actually moving into a place where you can be taking wise action.
Yeah, exactly. And it's true. That's why the practice is really designed to help us unravel and change our relationships and ourself in relationship to the world. And the intent is critical. The truth and the intent, all of it's critical. So I always say to people, you don't say about your heart, I like my left ventricle best. You know that you need all of your heart to function. And so often people are trying to ditch their stories. Like, I don't like this story, I want it to go away. But it's destabilizing. It's really one of my first books came out of realizing that I was studying with a very, very powerful teacher. I was working with an incredible group of people. And what I saw over time is that we would make huge changes in our lives. We would change the story, but then we would go back to the story. And I saw this happening over and over again. I started questioning, like, okay, wait a minute, how do you stabilize change? That's been my path, is really practical ways to not just think about change or to have like that feel-good boom change and then it slides back again, but to have sustainable change in our life. And really the warrior heart practice came out of that quest of mine, which has been for 20 years now, of looking at how do we stabilize change in our lives. And the intent is a big piece of that, because then you have your focus to go back in to start making the changes. Because it's not just because you see the story and you get to the truth. It doesn't mean that that changes the story necessarily in the world right away. You're now going to have to go back into your world. But your intent gives you the focus and the direction to navigate more effectively.
That's really powerful. Thank you. We are here with HeatherAsh Amara, learning about her course, The Warrior Heart Practice, which begins on Tuesday, February 11th. Please log on to warriorheartcourse.com for all the details and to register. So we've got another question coming in from Monica, who says, what would be a daily practice to release old stories from one's heart? So one thing that you can do, I really recommend bringing the warrior heart practice into your everyday life as the way to start to clear the story. So, and it can be very simple. So this is the thing I love about the warrior heart practice, is that it can help you unravel really big old things. And help you get clarity on things you've been carrying for your lifetime or for generations even before you. And it's also really effective with little itty bitty things, little bitty irritations in your life or little places you get stuck. And so using it as a daily practice, which would be, let's say you wake up in the morning and you go to brush your teeth and you notice as you're brushing your teeth, I'm just making up a story now, you just notice as you're brushing your teeth that you feel a little anxious. Okay, and that your heart's closed. Great. Finish brushing your teeth. Take 5 minutes and sit down and put your hand on your heart and say, hey, sweetie, let me feel the anxiety. And you go in and you feel the anxiety. And just let yourself notice, well, what else is happening in my body? When you're in the feeling chamber, you're not trying to fix it or change it. You're just feeling it. So then, and literally a minute, then you can go to, what's the story I'm telling myself? And then you look at, oh, I'm anxious about this conversation I have later in the day, or I'm anxious about my bank account, or I'm anxious about, you might even realize, sometimes this happens to me where I'll go into the story chamber and I'll realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm not even anxious, I'm actually happy. That's happened to me before, where for whatever reason I thought I was anxious and I go check in and I'm like, oh, I'm actually excited, but my story is making it into anxiety. So it's really helpful to separate the two out. What's the story I'm telling myself? And then what's actually true? Can you actually take action right now? Where are you at? Okay. Truth is always really simple, one sentence and a period. And then intent. What's your intent? Get clear on your intent. And then you're going to circle back, bring it back through intent with truth into the story. And that will allow you to open your heart again. Because really, I've seen this over and over and over again, whether it's a large thing or a little thing. When you're clear with your intent and you're speaking truth to yourself, when you've gotten clear about what the truth is, your relationship to the story changes and your heart opens.
because you realize this isn't my story. Oh, this is an old story. Oh, sweetie, I gotcha. The story isn't true. Like, there's so many things that can happen that will unravel it. So that is the daily practice I recommend, is actually just using the warrior heart practice for little things as well. And that'll help you to build the skill as well when larger things arise. A really quick thing that you can do is what we did at the beginning. One hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, take a breath. Come back to yourself. Tell yourself, I'm here. And that'll help you to begin to build trust that you're not going to abandon yourself, that you'll be with yourself. And that will help your heart to open as well.
Thank you. Kate says, the Toltecs were an ancient tribe. How did you learn their practices?
I was really blessed to study for many years with Don Miguel Ruiz, who is a direct descendant of the Toltecs. So there were many lineages that came out of the Toltec teachings, those ancient teachings. And the belief is that there were 12 different lineages. And when the Spanish invaded Mexico, the Toltec wisdom went underground. And the agreement between all the people that were holding the wisdom was, we will only teach one person at a time, because they didn't want the Spanish to get the wisdom. So basically the Toltec wisdom at the time got buried, but it went into different teachers, then took it out and started taking on apprentices. And there was a prophecy that eventually the Toltec teachings would come back out into the world. And Miguel was a big part of that with his book, The Four Agreements. And so that is where I'm in the direct line of that lineage, which is called the Eagle Knight lineage. And so the teachings that I'm bringing forward are from these ancient teachings that the whole family, myself, Don Miguel Jr., Don Jose, that we've all made it our own. We've brought it into the modern world to see what works. And that's really, Toltec is really based on what works now. So we've really updated the teachings to help humans for where humans are now.
Thank you very much. How do we know when we have fully released the story we've been telling ourselves?
How you know if you've released a story is that it doesn't hurt. It doesn't bring it. You're neutral about it. You're like, yep, that happened to me. So the difference between telling yourself a story and having the pain or a reaction or judgment or victimization or a feeling of I shouldn't have the story, and when you've really let it go, it's like, yeah, that happened to me. And there's no resonance in your body. What I love about when we've released a story, because it's not that stories are bad, that stories can be incredibly empowering. They can also be really healing. So, I have a really big old story around divorce, about a really challenging divorce that I had, for example. I have lots of stories, but was a big one. And it took me years to unravel it, and a lot of pieces with it. But now I look at it and I just feel love for my ex-husband. Even though it was really challenging and really messy, I'm just like, wow, that helped me become who I am. And it also helps me to then relate to other women that are going through divorce. Because I can say, I feel you, sweetheart. I know what you're going through. And I do. I've had the experience, but it doesn't hurt any longer. I don't have judgment around it or a feeling of being victimized. So you're neutral. That's how you know.
Thank you. Deanna says, is this course mostly for our own inner work, or will we leave with the tools to help others with this practice?
It's mostly for your own inner work. And I've also talked to people who have learned the practice and then have found that, their best friend is upset around something and they can say, hey, I've got this practice. Do you want to play with it? There was a woman that came to one of my courses that learned the Warrior Heart practice. And right after the course, her husband called her and was upset around something. And she said, hey, I just learned this thing. Do you want to try it with me? And she was able to help him unravel. So you can, once you get it in your body, it's actually a great thing to find other people or to share with other people that can help you go through the chambers, or that you can help go through the chambers. It's not a certification program. And you'll get it in your body so that you can offer it to people that are close to you.
And Peter says, can you say something more about the energetic versus the real heart?
There's been so many studies now done around the physical heart, and that the physical heart is now, they've realized that it has an energetic component that's much bigger than they realized before. And what we're working with is both the physical heart and the energetic heart. And they're overlapping, and there's also some differences. So when we're working with the heart, there's the physical. If you've ever had a heartbreak, you know that you feel that in your physical heart. And it also is a huge impact on the energetic heart. So what we're learning to do is work with the energetic of our heart that can often then help to heal the physical heart as well. I just did a session with a woman who had had a heart attack in November, and she's a shamanic journey practitioner, so she'd done a lot of shamanic journeying into her physical heart. And what she realized is that there was a piece that was impacted that had to do with her ancestry. And so she started exploring, and we did a warrior heart practice together. And what she found is that she had an agreement from childhood that was affecting her energy body, and you can say her energetic heart, that had then translated into her physical heart. And this is true with everything in our world. The energetic system often goes off balance first and then affects the physical. And so as we're doing something like the warrior heart practice, we're working with the energetic, because the stories and the emotions are energy. And stories are also energy. You put energy into a story and you can make it really, really strong. You pull the energy out of the story, it dissipates. So what we're working with is the energy of our stories, the energy of our feelings, and that can then have direct correlation to the physical, whether it's physical heart or body. Now, this is also an amazing practice to do around physical illness, chronic illness or physical illness, because you can start to see and get curious about, is there a story component to what I'm experiencing physically? And often there is. Not always, but often there is.
Thank you. Do some people, for instance, those who have suffered trauma and loss, need to do some preparation as a healing before they are able to benefit from your process?
I don't think that they need to do healing beforehand. I think that the process is designed in such a way that it's really supportive for people that are new or beginners to doing their own inner work, as well as people that are incredibly advanced. So I've talked to people that have done the warrior heart practice that have really done no other inquiry work or exploration of their own world or healing around their own trauma, and they found it to be incredibly effective. And I've also talked to people that have been doing work for years and realize that, somebody once told me, I've been doing a different inquiry practice for years, and I just realized for 15 years I've been ignoring my emotional body and shutting my emotional body down. So the beautiful thing about this particular practice is that it's really holistic. It's working with your full self. And all of us can benefit from that. The way I see it is this way, is that if you have all these tangles that are weighing you down, this practice helps you start to untangle things, to create more spaciousness in your life. And that spaciousness then brings more insight, more inner guidance, more intuition. And your body already knows what it needs to do to heal itself. Your emotional body knows what it needs to do to heal itself. What we're really doing through the warrior heart practice is getting out of the way so that our own healing can happen.
Thank you. Joan says, can you say a bit more about how to overcome betrayal?
So what we need to look at with betrayal is letting yourself have the permission to feel the betrayal and then be curious about what else is there. and then separate that from the story of the betrayal. So, and that what else is that story connected to? Because a lot of times with something like betrayal is there's the physical impact and the emotional impact of it, and then there's the story that we're telling ourselves. And what can get tangled in that story is previous betrayals or previous experiences that we thought were betrayals and we've tied together, but when we start to untangle them, we realize, oh, that wasn't actually a betrayal. I perceived it as a betrayal. And what also gets tangled in is expectations or places where we've made an agreement with somebody and they've not made that agreement. A lot of times, I know my experience around this feeling sense of betrayal was realizing that I had betrayed myself, that I wasn't listening to what I knew was true. And so that was tangled up in the story as well. And that for me, what helped me heal betrayal was really starting to separate out the story from the truth and look at where was my expectation and making the choice that it's not personal. No, I'm not saying that very well. That sometimes what gets tangled up in betrayal is that I can't ever trust again. And the universe is against me, or humans are always going to betray me. And that becomes the fear. And to really heal ourselves, we have to clear the story out to look at what's true. What's true is sometimes humans betray other humans, period. That's true. But not all humans betray other humans, period. And that the most important thing that we learn is to not betray ourselves. And when you really get that in your body, not just as a concept, but you really make that commitment to not abandon yourself, you understand that even if betrayal happens, you're going to not betray yourself. So it's a complicated issue for sure, but that's just some of the pieces that I found working through my own experience around betrayal and unwinding the story that wasn't just about the present, was also about the past, and making a commitment to use the experience to grow, to benefit myself, to open my heart, rather than using the betrayal as a reason to close my heart.
I love that. I will also add that I noticed a significant change in how I was feeling about my own experiences when I made a commitment to have my own back. It makes such a big difference. I'm glad you spoke on that. Yes. Yeah. We are going to have time for a few more questions, but before we take those, I want to share more details about the Warrior Heart practice. This is going to be a deeply transformative and healing 8 weeks with HeatherAsh, where you will learn how to creatively live your best life. The 8-module course takes place on Tuesdays at 12 noon Pacific, starting February 11th. You will receive audio and video replays, transcripts, and any other materials through your course homepage. Also, I'd like to remind you that we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on our courses, giving a full 2 weeks until February 25th in this instance to make sure you absolutely love it. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect to a private Facebook community group to stay in contact with one another. Everyone who registers receives the Warrior Heart Practice bonus collection, which includes extended Warrior Heart visualization and audio meditation from HeatherAsh, being a warrior of the heart, using all your challenges to get free, video dialogue with HeatherAsh and Michael Stone, Warrior Heart Practice, an ebook excerpt by HeatherAsh, and Be Brave, Owning Your Warrior Goddess Fire, a 4-part video series from HeatherAsh. And when you register by midnight Pacific on February 6th, you will also receive Creativity, Intent, and Silent Knowledge, a video dialogue with HeatherAsh and Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. And in this dialogue, HeatherAsh is joined by Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., and together they explore using our natural gifts of awareness and intent to create a life of balance and creativity. And they both share stories from their own lives that highlight how listening to the wisdom of our own bodies and flowing with the natural cycles of life is an important part of the dance of transformation. So let's get back to, let's see if we've got another question coming forward that we can offer. Someone would like to know if your work relates to diseases of the chambers of the heart, especially AFib.
I have not looked at that directly. So my focus has been around healing, really healing the mind. And what I'll say is that, as I said before, I just did a session with somebody that had had a heart attack, and we were able to use the Warrior Heart practice for her to get more insight of why her heart was impacted. So it's possible, absolutely, to use the Warrior Heart practice on physical ailments, not just of the heart, but of any part of the body, to get more guidance and information, to see where there might be energetic tangles or knots that are impacting the heart or impacting the body, and to really also come into a right relationship with our body. So, sometimes we hope, I want to find a practice that'll fix everything, where all these issues that I have. And the truth is, we're in bodies that are doing what they're doing, and that some of us have chronic illnesses, some of us have issues that we've been dealing with since our childhood, or things that happen with us as adults. And for me, it's about being in right relationship with our body. So we're listening to what our body needs, rather than thinking this shouldn't be happening. If I was more spiritual, I would be able to fix this problem. To stop looking at it as a problem and look at it as information that your body's giving you, and that we're learning how to deepen our relationship with our body, and to really open to healing. And healing looks different for everybody. But I know without a doubt that the Warrior Heart practice and the course, as we go through each of the modules, will help you to strengthen your relationship with yourself, with your body, and with whatever might be happening physically, so that you can gain more insight and wisdom and guidance to be in right relationship with yourself.
Thank you. And HeatherAsh, can you just speak a little bit more about what you are most looking forward to sharing with those who take the class and go on the journey with you?
Absolutely. I am so passionate about this work. This is like my heart's work, really, of bringing into the world. And one of the things I'm most excited about is having a community of people that are going through the practice together. Because what happens, there's difference from reading a book than being part of a group. That when you're part of a group and the group is all doing the same work and we'll be going through the chambers together, it helps you, because of the energy and the commitment of the group, to unravel things you might not be able to get to on your own. And so I know the power of community. I love helping to build community in such a way that you can be an individual but still benefit from the group, or you can also be really interactive and really connect with other people in the group. So to allow yourself to go deeper than you've been able to go on your own, to be supported in maybe facing things that have been scary or challenging, and to get the insights and the guidance to start to untangle things, maybe that you've been carrying around for decades, or maybe that you've even been pulling forward from your ancestors that don't serve you. I'm also really excited about helping us all to stabilize more in living from truth and intent, because really everything will change in your life when you understand how to use your intent properly. And most of us use our intent against ourselves. We judge ourselves, we compare ourselves, we criticize ourselves, we feel victimized. And so to learn to use your power, your intent, your focus to benefit yourself regardless of what's happening, so that you're using everything in your life to become more centered, stable, fluid, clear, and loving. And I know this process works. I've used it on myself, and I cannot tell you the tangles that I have undone. And I've got some great stories, and it's something else I'll be sharing. And I also have some mentors, some of my senior teachers that'll be coming on to share their experiences. because I know I learn best when I get stories or when I hear other people's experiences. And so I'm also really happy to make it more tangible so that it won't be a theoretical course, that we'll be in together, untangling, looking at our own stories and each other's in a loving way. Because really what happens as you do more and more of this practice, and I'm so excited to share with all of you, is that you start just loving your stories and seeing how creative you are. That makes them easy to untangle. You start being courageous to turn towards your emotional body rather than run away from it. And you really start to fall in love with the truth, with that desire to know what's true here and to anchor into your intent. So I'm really excited about the journey and hope that if you feel called to this type of work, that you step in with us over the next 8 weeks.
Thank you. And we have a question that came in asking, what is the difference between inner intent and universal intent?
Great question. I think of it this way, is that there's what I call little I intent and big I intent. And each of us has our own individual intent, our own individual focus, which is powerful. But it's nothing compared to big I intent, which is that universal flow of intent. It's life moving through us. And so when we align our little intent with universal intent, we have so much more capacity. And it takes learning how to surrender to the flow, because sometimes we can get caught up in like, if I just make this happen, if I just push through, I'll make it work. But we're going against universal intent. We're going against the larger flow. And when we start to surrender and listen, really listen to the guidance of what's the larger flow of intent here, and we align with it, life becomes so much easier, so much more fluid, and we have capacities that we didn't realize that we had. So there's that quality of cleaning up our personal intent so that we're clear, but also learning how to surrender and ride the energy of universal intent, or that big I intent.
Thank you. And our final question, this has been so sweet, and I really appreciate having had the chance to speak with you. I just wanted to say that from myself personally. Our final question is from Tanya, who says, how has this quest for you to help people stabilize change differed from your past work? I really resonate with your work and have benefited in so many ways, but I've struggled to stabilize the teachings, and I am concerned about exposing myself to another process. I love your idea of working with this model with a therapist. I'm really ready to go deep with this idea of stabilizing and want to find the best avenue for this for myself.
So what's been different for me with this particular practice? So I came up with this practice 6 years ago, and God, I wish I had come up with it earlier, or somebody had come up with it earlier, because it's really changed my life in a really drastic way. And I had a lot of work behind me before that. I mean, I've been gal for 15 years, longer, 20 years when I came up with this practice. Before that, so I had a lot of focus. But there's something about this particular practice that cuts to the core of the places that we get tangled together and helps us to separate things out. So in my experience with sharing this work and doing this work, I mean, one, being a facilitator, I get to talk to myself over and over again every time I teach. It's great. Like, it's such a genius way to be in the world, because I'm on my path as well. So I don't consider myself separate for everybody else, or like, let me give you this wisdom that I have completely mastered. I'm in process. We're all on a journey together. And that's what's exciting about it, is that we get to play together. And so for me, this particular practice has been completely life-changing. Again, I said before, like, I've had some issues that would have leveled me, like would have had me thinking and trying to figure them out and really upset. And I just stop and go, all right, let's go through the practice. Let's go through the chambers. And I'm able to untangle stuff and get clear. That piece of the subtitle of the book is From Confusion to Clarity. it really works to help you get clear. And it's a tool that you can add to any toolbox that you have. That's the other beautiful thing around it. So it's not going to take away from the other work that you're doing. It's just an incredibly effective tool to enhance any other work that you're doing, any path that you're on, any healing that you're working with. So whether you work with it with somebody else or you work with it on your own, there's a lot of benefit to this particular practice because of the design of it and the holistic method of working with the emotions, the story, the truth, and the intent. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for joining us. The Warrior Heart practice begins on February 11th. And again, please visit warriorheartcourse.com to learn more and to register. And reminder, if you do so by midnight, February 6th, you will receive the special bonus of a video dialogue entitled Creativity, Intent, and Silent Knowledge. HeatherAsh, do you have any final words for our listeners?
First, thank you so much, Nadira. This has been such a joy, and thank you to everyone who shared questions. And I'd say the last piece is that the work that I feel that we're all doing together is about cleaning the old stories and agreements that don't serve us, that weigh us down, and doing more of what we love. When you do more of what you love, you connect with what I call your big soul, which is your wisdom, universal intent, life force. So I always am encouraging all of us, do more of what you love in your life and clean. Find practices that help you to clean. And it's not that you're broken, it's that you have agreements, stories, old emotions that simply need to be cleared out. So the radiance and the brilliance and the love that you are, the wisdom that you are, can start to shine.
Thank you. Thank you so much, HeatherAsh. It's been so sweet to speak with you. I really appreciate it.
Good. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for joining us today. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well and look forward to having you on this course and or another one in the future. Take care.